Hello, my name is David Moore. I am the Town Administrator for the Town of Stratham, and I'm going to present this voter information for the 2025 Town Meeting. Town Meeting is held in two sessions. The first session is an election to be held on Tuesday, March 11th. That is where residents will vote on Articles 1 through 9, that is the town officers and zoning amendments. On Saturday, March 15th, the remaining articles will be acted on. Those articles are 10 through 24. In this presentation, I'm going to concentrate on those articles that will be covered at the second session, beginning with Article 10. Important dates for this 2025 town meeting include this Thursday, the voter information night. Tuesday, March 11th is the election, and Saturday, March 15th is the business session held at the Stratham Memorial School. All of this information is available on the town's town meeting website, strathamnh.gov. A number of resources for you to get to know the information that will be presented via the warrant articles is available. The first article is Article 10, the 2025 operating budget. First, let's cover what your tax bill covers. This dollar bill represents 100% of your tax bill. Everything that we speak about in this presentation and appropriate at town meeting will fall under this 16% of your tax bill. Every other portion of your taxes relate to the county, local education, and state education. The town represents 16% of your tax bill. All the services that are associated with this 16% include the library, all of our public works functions, including trash and recycling pickup, the transfer station, winter operations, parks and playground maintenance, and parks programming and senior services, as well as your police department, Stratham Volunteer Fire Department, all the general administration departments, as well as capital projects and rolling stock. The budget highlights for this year include a 2.49% increase in the operating budget. That is a $211,000 increase over last year. This budget includes a 3% increase for all town employees. All revenues are expected to stay roughly the same and may decrease slightly depending on state revenues. As a result, we've done some conservative projections in this budget. The overall impact of the town's budget will require $5,417,000 in property tax revenues. This is a 1.76 increase, or about a $100,000 increase from what was raised from local property taxes last year for the town. This will result in an estimated tax rate of $2.11. This is a 3-cent increase over last year's rate of $2.08. So what's changing in this budget? As I mentioned, the operating budget increase is $211,000 or 2.49%. There are two main components to this change. The additional investment in our fire department staffing, which I'll speak to later, is an increase of $275,000. It's also made up of a decrease in other operating budget items, a decrease of $64,000. What allows us to have a decrease in that other operating? Two developments this year allow that to happen. Last year, we repaid the public safety complex bond, which was $245,000 that is no longer needed this year. In addition, we are utilizing additional funds out of the EMS Special Revenue Fund to support operating costs in the ambulance operations for our fire department. The increase discussed in the previous slide is primarily related to the investments being made in our Stratham Volunteer Fire Department. These investments are in response to two strategies. One, the development of a paramedic program with the loss of the Exeter ALS service, and two, enhanced coverage in our fire station 7 days a week. This budget funds 7 days a week of firefighter EMTs in the station and a paramedic program which will build up to 7 days a week. We have on board a full-time paramedic supervisor and 3 to 4 per diem paramedics who will provide this service along with our Stratham Volunteer Fire Department EMTs and advanced EMTs already in service to the town. This slide describes where the funding goes by category. About a quarter of the funding raised goes for public safety, about 17% for personnel administration. Those are benefits associated with employing our employees. Public Works and Sanitation together make up about another 25%, and the rest is for general government, debt service, and our other services. Every local government operation is predominantly made up of costs associated with employing people. 62% of our overall operating budget goes to payroll and benefits. We've been fortunate with sound financial planning, discipline, and overall prudence in managing the affairs of the town that we have been able to achieve very modest increases in operating costs in the last 10-year period. The average over that 10-year period is a 2.7% year-over-year increase. And as you know, the year-over-year increase this year is 2.49%. The next article is the Capital Improvements Program. This year, we're funding about $727,000 for this article. That is the typical amount that we raise each year for different capital improvements throughout town. There are ongoing investments that we make each year that are sizable in technology, annual paving, and the PFAS contamination response, as well as one-time investments in special projects like our town website update, bathrooms at the library in Stratham Hill Park, and basketball court resurfacing. Article 12, appropriate funds to capital reserve funds. Each year, we appropriate funds to be put into our capital reserve funds. This allows us to plan for expenses into the future in a smooth way. This article changes rarely in the total amount of funding, but the spending that happens each year can increase or decrease depending on the needs of the replacement schedule and the condition of our equipment and rolling stock. Article 13 is to modify the purpose of Emergency Medical Services Special Reserve Fund. This year, the Select Board and staff in the Fire Department studied the EMS Special Reserve Fund and opportunities to make greater use of it to offset operating costs that would otherwise fall to the residents through the tax rate. This article adds eligible costs to include things like purchasing emergency medical equipment and supplies, providing training to fire department personnel, uniforms, vehicles and equipment, ambulance contract costs, and other costs to operate the ambulance. This EMS fund is a very powerful tool to fund operations and equipment. It has been used to fund all of our recent ambulance purchases, 100% of proceeds from this fund. This strategy of adding additional operating costs will allow us to continue that practice of funding 100% of our ambulances through that special revenue fund. Article 14 is the appropriation of the new costs that are now eligible under Article 13. If Article 13 does not pass, Article 14 will be moot. Here you have the total value that we are requesting to cover additional operating costs in the EMS fund. Without this new expanded purpose approved in Article 13, these costs would fall to the general fund. Article 15 is a typical article that the town meeting will recall seeing from year to year. This one is for equipment in our fire department. The self-contained breathing apparatus compressor needs replacement in our fire station, and the new ambulance needs to be outfitted with a Lucas Autopulse device to match the one currently in use in our other ambulance. Article 17 is an adjustment to the veterans credit. It is submitted by petition and requests modification from $600 to the state maximum allowed of $750. The town has about 330 veterans who receive this credit. That means the additional cost of this credit would be $50,000. Next, Article 18, modification to the elderly exemptions. Town of Stratham has not updated the elderly exemption criteria since 2019. This article increases the maximum exempt value under this credit. The figures in white show adjustments from the last time this article was amended. This article also increases the income for eligibility and narrows the gap between single, and married households. This article also increases the amount of net assets that one can have and still receive the credit. Article 19 is the adoption of disabled exemptions. The town has not previously offered this exemption, which must first be adopted by a town meeting. This article also provides that if residents are eligible for this exemption and the elderly exemption, they would be eligible only for the exemption which is of greater value. The value set for this exemption is $150,000. The income and asset limits are set to match the elderly exemption. Article 20. Modify amount of blind exemption. Each town in New Hampshire is required to offer the blind exemption, but they are able to adjust the amount of the exemption. For administrative ease, this article recommends the exemption level be set to match the disabled exemption, $150,000. There are no income or asset limitations as part of this exemption. Article 21, Adoption of the Deaf Exemption. This exemption is for severely hearing impaired persons as determined by a licensed audiologist after an assessment. The value of this exemption is set to match the recommended levels in previous articles for blind and disabled. The income and asset limits match those recommended for the elderly exemption. Article 22, Adoption of Stratum Recreation Expendable Trust. Accounting standards and guidance from our auditors have discouraged the commingling of donations related to recreation programming with the town's recreation revolving fund. That fund collects fees for programming and funds recreation programs. Through the establishment of this fund, the town will have a repository for donations for specific recreation purposes or general donations from fundraising activities of volunteer groups. This tool prevents commingling with town funds for other purposes. Article 23, Stevens Park Improvements. This article appropriates $625,000 for the purposes of implementing improvements at Stevens Park at 70 Bunker Hill Avenue. This premier recreation facility on land donated by the Stevens family has been a beloved community resource for over 20 years. 3 key improvements are sought to be made to the facility overall. Expanded parking lot to meet demands of peak visitation. The existing parking spaces limit the programming options at the facility. Construction of a pavilion for shade and bathrooms. Similar to the Scammon Pavilion in Stratham Hill Park, this facility would greatly increase programming opportunities and add much more use for events that require shelter, public restrooms, and picnic tables. And the expansion of court space. With additional hard court surfacing, additional sports can be accommodated beyond the existing 2 tennis courts. This project is planned to be bid in the spring of 2025. Project components above may need to be phased depending on project pricing following the bids. This one-time project is an appropriate use of fund balance and would leave the town with a projected fund balance at the end of next year of 7.82%. This is within recommended guidance from the state of New Hampshire for municipalities. There is no impact on the tax rate with this funding strategy. That concludes the description of the articles for the 2025 town meeting. I am David Moore, Town Administrator for the Town of Stratham, and I look forward to seeing you at town meeting. Thank you.